Laura sat on her porch, sipping coffee as the sun began to rise. It was a quiet morning, the kind she had always cherished. Yet, beneath the tranquility, lay a storm brewing in her life. At 30, she found herself navigating the turbulent waters of a recent divorce. It had been a whirlwind of emotions, leaving her drained and disoriented. As she looked around, memories of laughter and shared dreams with her ex-husband David flooded her mind. They had been a couple filled with hope and aspirations, deciding early on not to have children to focus on their careers. Laura had her music dreams and was determined to pursue them. David had supported her ambitions. At least, he had claimed to. Their first year of marriage had been a blissful adventure, but the cracks in their relationship began to show when David's family dynamics came into play. It was his sister's constant neediness that began to gnaw at the fabric of their marriage. Laura's heart raced at the thought of those chaotic gatherings with David's sister and her 3 boisterous boys. They had transformed her peaceful home into a battleground of noise and tantrums. Little did she know, the calm would soon give way to a confrontation that would test her resolve. The first time David invited his sister over, Laura hesitated. "Are you sure about this?" she had asked, sensing the impending chaos. But David had insisted, claiming his sister needed their help. "She's overwhelmed," he said. Laura reluctantly agreed, remembering her own family's closeness. But the moment his sister arrived, it was clear that this would not be a simple visit. The boys, wild and untamed, burst through the door, leaving a trail of toys and chaos in their wake. Laura felt her stomach churn as the sounds of shouting and laughter filled her home. She watched David as he smiled, seemingly unaware of the stress mounting within her. As the day wore on, Laura found herself running around, trying to keep the boys entertained while also maintaining her composure. "This isn't what I signed up for," she thought, feeling a sense of dread creeping in. By the time the sun set, Laura was exhausted, but David seemed invigorated, sharing jokes and stories with his sister as if nothing had happened. That night, Laura lay awake, contemplating whether this was a one-time occurrence or a sign of things to come. She had a sinking feeling that her dreams were slowly being overshadowed by a family she didn't know how to navigate. As weeks passed, David's sister's visits became more frequent, each one more chaotic than the last. Laura felt like a stranger in her own home. One evening, David returned with an announcement that sent shockwaves through her. "I think we should take the kids out for ice cream tomorrow," he said, excitement shining in his eyes. "They've been asking about you." Laura's heart raced with anxiety. "David, I have work tomorrow, and I can't handle all of them at once," she protested, but he brushed her concerns aside. "They're family, Laura. You need to step up." Those words stung, igniting a fire of resentment within her. The realization hit her hard. Her dreams were becoming secondary to David's expectations. The following day, the boys arrived, wild and raucous, and Laura found herself caught in a whirlwind of demands. "Can we have pizza? Can we play outside?" Their constant energy drained her, and the guilt of not meeting David's expectations weighed heavily on her heart. After one particularly chaotic evening, where one of the boys spilled juice all over her favorite rug, she finally snapped. "I can't do this anymore, David," she yelled, frustration boiling over. The silence that followed was deafening, a palpable tension hanging in the air, signaling that everything was about to change. That night, Laura sent an email to David, pouring out her feelings in a way she couldn't voice aloud. She expressed her frustrations about his sister's constant presence and how it affected their marriage. The next morning, she awoke to find his response waiting in her inbox. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. My sister just needs help. Why can't you see that?" His dismissive tone cut deep. Laura felt a mix of anger and betrayal. This was the man who had once promised to support her dreams, yet here he was, insisting she cater to his sister's whims. As days turned into weeks, the emotional distance between them grew. Laura's heart ached as she realized their relationship was crumbling under the weight of expectations she couldn't meet. David's attitude only added fuel to the fire. Every argument pushed her further away. The once warm and inviting home had turned into a battlefield of silent treatments and accusations. Laura felt trapped, caught between her desire to honor her marriage and her growing resentment toward David and his family. The tension was palpable, and she knew a decision had to be made. She needed to regain control of her life before it was too late. After one particularly tense argument about family obligations, Laura decided she couldn't stay in a situation that felt suffocating. "I need time to think," she finally said, gathering her things to leave. David's face fell, and for the first time she saw a flicker of worry in his eyes. As she drove to her parents' house, tears streamed down her face. The road felt endless, but she needed to escape the chaos. When she arrived, her parents welcomed her with open arms, sensing her turmoil. They listened as she recounted her struggles, and for the first time in months, Laura felt heard. "You deserve to pursue your dreams without feeling trapped," her father reassured her. The weight of her decision felt heavy, but as she settled into her old room, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this time apart would give her the clarity she needed. But deep down, she knew the battle wasn't over. David would try to win her back, and she had to be prepared for whatever came next. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but she steeled herself. She was ready to fight for her dreams. Just as Laura began to settle into her new routine, an unexpected email from David jolted her from her thoughts. "If you don't come home, your music box might be destroyed when my sister visits tomorrow." The threat sent a chill through her. How could he use something so precious against her? That music box was a gift from her grandmother, filled with memories of love and warmth. In that moment, the fear of losing it sparked a fire within her. She responded coldly, "You don't understand what you're doing. I'll protect what's mine." Days turned into a blur as Laura worked to maintain her composure. Yet the threat loomed over her like a dark cloud. She couldn't shake the feeling that David would stop at nothing to regain control. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart raced, expecting another email filled with demands or manipulations. Despite the chaos in her mind, Laura started to rediscover herself. She practiced her music daily, pouring her emotions into her craft. The notes became a form of release, a way to channel her frustrations into something beautiful. But as she played, her thoughts drifted back to David and his threats. Would she ever be free from this torment? Just when Laura thought she was gaining control, an unexpected visit from her mother-in-law threw her off balance. "David is worried about you, Laura. He wants to make things right," she said gently, trying to bridge the gap. Laura felt anger rising. Does he? Or does he just want me to return to being his caregiver? Her mother-in-law looked taken aback, but Laura pressed on. "I can't just ignore how his sister's demands have taken over my life." The conversation felt like a delicate dance, each word weighted with unspoken truths. Her mother-in-law didn't seem to grasp the full extent of the situation. "David loves you, Laura. He's just trying to help his family," she insisted, but Laura shook her head. "I can't be the only one making sacrifices." With each passing moment, Laura felt her resolve strengthen. This wasn't just about her marriage anymore. It was about her self-worth and dreams. As her mother-in-law left, Laura made a silent vow. She would not return to a life where she felt invisible. But the looming question remained. Would David truly understand her perspective? Or was this the beginning of a deeper divide? Laura spent the following days wrestling with her emotions. She practiced her music, finding solace in the melodies, yet the fear of confronting David hung over her. Would he listen? Would he finally see her side? Finally, she gathered her thoughts and crafted an email to him, detailing her feelings about his expectations and the way they had drifted apart. She hit send, her heart racing. Almost immediately, she received a reply. "You're being dramatic. I just want to help my sister." The dismissal stung like a slap. The next evening, David showed up at her parents' house unannounced. His face was a mix of frustration and concern. "Why are you doing this, Laura?" "We're supposed to be a team," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. Laura took a deep breath, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "A team shouldn't mean sacrificing one person's happiness for another's. I feel like I'm losing myself." Their conversation escalated, words flying back and forth like arrows. "You've changed," he accused, and Laura felt a pang in her chest. Had she? Or had the situation forced her to become someone she didn't recognize? As the argument intensified, Laura's emotions boiled over. "I can't keep living like this, David. You need to choose between your sister and our marriage." The silence that followed was deafening. David's eyes widened, as if the weight of her words finally struck him. "I never wanted this," he murmured, almost to himself. In that moment, Laura saw the cracks in his facade. He was just as lost as she was, trapped in a web of familial expectations. But Laura knew she couldn't bear the burden any longer. "If you can't support my dreams and our life together, then what's the point?" The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. David's expression softened, but Laura couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship was hanging by a thread. She had to be strong. Taking a deep breath, she realized that this confrontation was not just about David. It was about her reclaiming her voice. She had spent too long silencing her needs for the sake of others. "I need time to think," she said finally, her heart pounding. "I can't make any decisions right now." With those words, she took a step back, unsure of what the future held but resolute in her determination to find her path. In the days that followed, Laura sought solace in her music, letting the notes guide her emotions. Each melody became a reflection of her turmoil, a way to express the fears she had buried deep within. As she played, the memories of David's sister's chaotic visits and his dismissive remarks haunted her. Yet, she found strength in her vulnerability. One evening, while practicing a particularly emotional piece, Laura received a call from her brother. "I've been hearing things from Mom. How are you holding up?" His voice was warm and reassuring. Laura opened up about her struggles, the weight of the expectations she felt from David and his family. "You deserve to chase your dreams, Laura. Don't let anyone dim your light," he encouraged. Those words resonated deeply within her. For the first time in a while, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was her turning point. She realized that no matter what happened with David, she had to prioritize herself. The thought of reclaiming her dreams sparked a fire within her. She spent the next few days drafting a plan for her music career, mapping out goals she had once set aside. It was time to take control of her life and move forward, no matter the outcome of her marriage. As Laura's confidence grew, she made the decision to confront David one last time. She wanted to be clear about her feelings and set boundaries. Meeting at a nearby cafe, the tension between them was palpable. David sat across from her, his expression a mix of hope and anxiety. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began, but Laura interrupted him. "I need you to listen. I can't be the only one fighting for this marriage. You need to understand how your family dynamics are affecting us." David shifted in his seat, looking defensive. "I just want to help them," he said, frustration seeping into his voice. "Why can't you see that?" Laura felt her heart race as she explained how she felt trapped between his sister's demands and her own dreams. "I can't support you and your family if I'm losing myself in the process," she emphasized, her voice firm. But David's face hardened. "You're being selfish," he snapped, the accusation stinging. Laura felt her heart sink. They were at an impasse. The realization hit her hard. This wasn't just about his family. It was about their incompatible visions for the future. As the conversation spiraled into familiar arguments, Laura felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Perhaps their love wasn't enough to bridge the growing divide between their dreams and responsibilities. That night, Laura returned to her parents' house, her heart heavy but resolute. The weight of the decision loomed over her like a dark cloud, but she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The next morning, she sat down to draft another email to David. "I think it's best if we separate," she wrote, her fingers trembling as she pressed send. In that moment, she felt a surge of freedom. No longer would she be confined by someone else's expectations. With every passing day, Arzrania, Laura embraced the possibility of a new beginning. She threw herself into her music, pouring her heart into each note, finding solace in the melodies that once felt distant. As she practiced, Laura felt the shadows of her past slowly fading away. With each performance, she connected with her audience, sharing her story through song. Months later, she stood on stage, the spotlight shining brightly on her, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly alive. The journey had been painful, but it had led her to rediscover herself. She realized that happiness didn't have to be tied to a relationship. It could be about chasing her dreams and finding her voice. Laura knew she was ready to face whatever came next, confident in the knowledge that her true happiness lay within her own choices.